We are going to move on to our final session this morning, which is a panel discussion. And we're going to discuss a year in the life of 5G. So I guess it's only just over a year since we started to deploy 5G, and none of us expected the year to pan out in quite the way it did. So how has that affected 5G and its rollout? Did COVID slow down the investment, etc.? So let me first introduce our panelists, and then we can talk about what we think happened and what we think is going to happen with 5G deployment. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
So Tom Bennett, I am Director for Partnerships and Innovations at EE and BT in the technology function, looking at new technologies and new use cases for our technology.
Okay, thank you. And then Luc.
Hey, and hello from Belgium as well. I'm Luc Bruynseels. I'm the VP Engineering for Telenet, which is a converged operator in Belgium, so mobile and fixed, and also busy with one of the things is 5G.
Okay, Terje.
Yes, so I'm Terje Jensen, heading up the network architect team and also the 5G readiness program in Telenor. So I'm based in Oslo, Norway.
Okay, so should I start maybe with Luc? Luc, regarding 5G and a year in the life of, are we where you thought we'd be? Are we behind, ahead? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there is every country is in a slightly different journey. I think there Belgium is not ahead of the pack or not even in the front runners. I think we're late. And there it's, I mean, in Belgium, we expect that the auction of the spectrum is only available end of this year. We also have quite stringent regulation on certain fronts, so that doesn't make it easy. I think if you look where we are, I think it's of course 4G is performing very well, and so that you see that as well in our network. We're doing the performance is amazing what you get out of a 4G network currently, and so we're a big believer that the evolution of 5G will come in the next years. It will not be a big bang, and so there as well is if you see where we are is I think it's more or less what we expected. Some things could be quicker, but on the other hand, is also we have to find the right pace of introducing 5G and to see, okay, how can we make that economically viable as well. And so I think there is we're on track. I think we did some testing and so on in the last I would say 18 months. We did some proof of concept. We worked together with B2B clients, with partners and so on to really see, okay, what is the potential of 5G, and that is huge. To see really how that will fit, I think this year is going to be a very important year for that. I think everybody agrees as well in the last what we saw in the last 9 months and what we expect for this year is that communication is really critical in the time that we're living, and so 5G will make that even harder, faster, and better and stronger as well.
And what about deployments at Telenor? How have you been affected? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Just struggling to find the unmute button. Yeah, so I think we actually, as I said, I'm also heading up a 5G readiness strategic program in Telenor. So it was interesting. Beginning of last year, we actually set some ambitions where we should be end of 2020. And then we had this interesting exercise on looking at those a couple of weeks ago, and how accurate did we hit those, or did we miss, and what kind of misses did we do? So I think it's what also Luc said, that it's important to consider that the different countries are in different state or phases. And the Telenor Group, we are in 9 different countries. Some in the Nordics, that is Northern Europe, and also in Asia. So it's I think it's important to be aware of those kind of situations. Then it's also interesting that I think what is said that about a year ago, that where we should be end of 2020, we were roughly right on the level in a way. So we have at that time and also early in the beginning of 2020 launched 5G commercially in Finland, for example. So that's available there and has been available there for both for mobile broadband and fixed wireless access. And then also in the year early in the year of 2020, we launched commercially in Norway mobile broadband offering there, and that was interesting because that was in the same days as this COVID kicked in. So that was one of the first online fully launched event we had to organize. So it was a bit different launch party, to call it like that, than what we are used to. But it's an interesting exercise there as well. And then we have seen, of course, in these two markets that has been gradually picking up in the different in the market. Of course, as smartphones are becoming more available, and also as we are deploying more networks in the countries. Then just recently, we also launched in Sweden in the 5G offering, and we are also gradually deploying and making networks ready and also systems ready in different other countries. So roughly, I think we are actually more or less according to the plans roughly 1 year ago. Some more earlier and some a bit behind, but quite okay as we saw them 1 year ago.
So overall, you pretty much stuck to the plan. And Tom, how about you and EE?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, in EE in the UK, we launched first in May 2019 with a strong 5G launch. And yes, as you'd expect, we have an aggressive plan to carry that rollout and carry on that rollout. And I don't think we could ignore the impact on COVID. You know, whilst we've had a very strong rollout, and in fact we're in 125 towns and cities now, adding kind of an extra 62 in 2020, let's not ignore the fact that due to those kind of localized lockdowns and national lockdowns, even though our engineers are exempt, you know, they're part of the national infrastructure, they're having to deal with, if they're going to a remote site, where can they stay? You know, simple stuff, where can they go to the toilet, where can they grab a sandwich? So, you know, it has had an impact on us on the rate at which we look to roll out. Nonetheless, we are happy with our progress. We are the furthest advanced in that geographic rollout for 5G in the UK. I agree with the points my colleagues made. I think, you know, you're seeing a maturity in the smartphone market. Obviously, we launched the iPhone last autumn with Apple, the 5G iPhone. And interestingly, there we are seeing the 5G chipsets coming down the price range a lot more aggressively than we saw in 4G. So, you know, I'm expecting us to see a bigger growth in just the general availability of 5G in the device portfolio.
Okay. Sorry.
So go on. Yeah, go on.
I beg your pardon. I was going to say, so consumer aside, what about 5G? You know, we've talked a lot and heard a lot about different use cases, different operational models, different business models, moving up the stack, working closely with various businesses and all that. Has there been progress there, and has that been as expected, or has that been put on a back burner while we've been struggling with the pandemic?
Sorry, is that to me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So no, definitely not put on the back burner. Quite the opposite. I agree with the point one of my colleagues made around it is the strength of both 4G and 5G together. We have seen a great experimentation over the last year and a half, a series of good innovations, particularly, let's again talk about COVID in healthcare. And it's you know, we've experimented with 5G connected ambulance. We've carried kind of ultrasound remotely from a 5G connected ambulance. But equally, part of what we've done here, as well as, you know, 5G, looking at our role as operators, connecting people in this lockdown. Yes, we have connected a lot of those hospitals in the UK. We've turned connectivity around extremely quickly, and we've also provided devices for that, I'm afraid, end of life care. You know, this is the scenario we find ourselves in societally, and yes, I see the operators on the front foot there. But coming back to your point, no, to answer you directly, I do not see any slowdown from that innovation and experimentation, quite the opposite. Given this connectivity, we're seeing a lot of people using it in new ways, trying to experiment.
And is that, Luke and Terje, is that your experience with 5G? I mean, Luke, you might be observing what's going on in other countries, but I don't know.
Absolutely, I think there is the pace of innovation or what is possible that is enormous, and that is really nice to see on the 5G ecosystem what it just brings, and also in just in innovation with different parts of the industries, different companies and so on. That is amazing. What you see is now there's really it's really early days with test and so on. We see what is working, but you don't have really a lot of huge adoption yet. And I think that will be like 2 years out, probably 2022, 2023. Then you will really see also the benefit of standalone kicking in and so on. But you see that now is a time that to experiment, to see that we can test different business models to work together with clients, because that is a nice thing about the innovation on 5G. There will be a network will be first probably used in a large scale by our directly consumer customers, and of course things like fixed wireless access and so on will be a niche in connectivity that will be there for forever. But you see that what it does with innovation on what we can think, and that there I think it started a few years ago already what 5G could bring. I think everybody is really looking forward to what is all the possibilities in a couple of years from now.
Terje, what's about in Telenor? Are you doing a lot of work with enterprises, or is your main focus with 5G at the moment on the consumer market?
No, I think it's fair to say that it's both actually in one sense. But what we see, and I think Tom mentioned that, is that during 2020 we have seen acceleration on 5G, which is triggered, I would say, related to this Industry 4.0, more or less political statements. But it's clearly helping the enterprises to automate and to become more efficient, and also having a safe working environment. I think. And probably also further accelerated with COVID. So that's the collaborating with enterprises with specific cases there is something we have seen during last year, which is become higher and higher on the agenda. And this is both on the political, but also from their own motivation, as people cannot meet, so they have to remotely control some of the installations, and there is also further efficiency improvements that they are driven from the enterprises. So clearly there are some use cases on 5G. Which are early on the enterprises, but then I think it's fair to say, I think also Tom mentioned that, and Luke in the very beginning, that as soon as we sit down and discuss with enterprises, and we believe that we maybe should have a 5G dialogue, it turns out that actually they are happy with 4G. And they can very well start with a lot of applications, and there is a lot of things to already be based on 4G for a while. And then, of course, further down the line, there will sooner or later there will be a need for 5G speeds and latency and capacity. But a lot of the use cases can be implemented on 4G already. And we have seen this, as I said, the interest there has been growing quite a lot, even during the second half of 2020 in many of the markets where we are.
And this has been accelerated by COVID and the way we've all had to change. Well, anybody who can has changed how they work, and
yeah, that has been clear. I think we have been quite open we have been running our networks from the homes in all the countries, and we can talk about operators doing that, but a lot of the other enterprises are in the same situation. And then you have, of course, homeschooling and all those kind of things. You have online shopping, and so you have a lot of things which is further fueling, the whole online collaboration and interactions. And then there is a lot of creativity around this one as well, which is interesting to observe on what kind of systems or services we can think of going forward. Typically with some kind of element of video, which is then driving, of course, the need for capacity or bandwidth.
Yes, Tom, what about the rise of video? Has that been an immense factor for you in the last year?
I mean, as BT obviously fixed and mobile, yes, clearly it has. But our network has more than coped. So yes, I suppose the interesting insight for me is, you know, the lockdown, the pandemic happened at just the right time. I think, interestingly, a lot of the applications, even 3-4 years ago, probably weren't mature enough compared to Zoom and Teams now. Obviously, BT has an extensive strategic relationship with Zoom and with Microsoft. So yes, we've seen a significant growth. And to build on what Terje was saying, it's a collaboration. When I look at what we're doing in enterprise, we're working with so many customers collaboratively about their own roadmaps and how we can bring value together. And yes, over the course of the next 5 years, that will be a combined 4G and 5G delivery. But in time, yes, we'll bring in those new features, the low latency, the much higher bandwidth, as the 5G network's ready, as, to be clear, their applications are ready. But yes, to answer your question, we are seeing a significant video growth.
So I'm just wondering that we tend to think of Zoom as what we're doing now. We're sitting in front of our laptops and we're having a conference with an audience out there, which is great. I'm just wondering though, how much our use of mobile and mobile devices with Zoom and stuff, I mean, has that been, I'd have thought that had been a big factor. Because not everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to you on a tablet right now. Okay. So that when we think of mobile first, there tends to be this overlap with all of us, particularly an old network engineer like me, where you think about the mobile network. But to be clear, I think mobile first for most businesses, for most enterprises, just means the way in which they consume. You know, it's going to be through a tablet, through a smartphone. So yes, I do think that will be a significant factor in how we, with our enterprise partners, look at how their business works. We've had a couple of cases in the last year and a half, where some significant enterprise customers are now coming to us saying they don't really want fixed anymore. Can we just have mobile first? So you're starting to see that already.
That's interesting. And Luke, have you seen that customers, maybe enterprise customers, moving away?
You see that the boundaries are getting more vague than it was before. Yeah. So for a customer, it doesn't really matter how they're connected. Is it with Wi-Fi? Is it with 4G, with 5G? I mean, they want to be connected, and we have to offer them the service that it's working everywhere. And I agree there completely with Tom. I think in that sense, if the lockdown was 10 years earlier or something like that, we were in a completely different state as was for sure for remote working and so on. Now is if you see how good it works as well, if you're in your house, but also if you're on the go and if you're in transit between the two, that is of course what you expect. That it just works and seamlessly, that it works, and you don't, as an end customer, you don't care on what it is. We see, I mean, we saw as well, of course, a big increase in March last year to from 1 week to another, that everybody was home, and so we have typically depending on mobile and fixed, we have a growth of like 30 to 50% every year. So you see that. So we always cater for growth, but then you see that you really need it to have that step function that you can that you can support it. And of course, video and streaming video and so on, it's a big part of all the consumption that is there. But as a customer, you don't think too much about how you want to be connected, and probably that's the future, that you will be more convergent than ever.
And have any of you got views about the standardization process, and whether that's a really big issue because it's been slowed, and sort of the move from standalone to non-standalone and the core? I mean, do you think that's a big issue, or?
Do we think that's the fault of standards, or do we just think that's the ecosystem being ready?
Or just the ecosystem? Sorry,
I'd be interested to hear my colleague's opinion.
I just didn't hear the end of it, that's all.
Sorry, I didn't. I suppose you asked a question about standards. I mean, my view of standards would be, if you go back to 2G, I think the 2G standards were defined in something like 1986. 1987, and it took three and a half years for the first 2G network to be delivered. Compare that to 5G, where I think I'm right in saying the 5G standard was defined and agreed and ratified in March. We launched in May. So, you know, we have the ability as an industry to turn stuff around when we need to, when we want to. I do think where standalone is concerned, which is more about, for me, the full virtualization, that's about the maturity of the industry, the ecosystem, and making sure it's absolutely stable before we migrate our existing customer bases across. I don't know, that's my personal opinion.
Okay, well, 3GPP is not as fast as it wanted to be because of the difficulty of the number of people involved, I think, working this way. So, Terje?
Yeah, no, I think you're on something there anyway, because it's I think they just announced a 6 months delay on the next release, so that's one indication. So I think it's a strong indication that working online is a bit challenging in some fora. And I think what I believe also Tom is a bit indirectly alluding to is that there are quite a lot of people involved in standardization, and there are quite strong business interests. And that's obvious on the surface that there are companies, and without coming into specific ones, which are pulling in their own direction. So sometimes the standardization is a bit slow moving, but I think it's very important, of course, to get the world volumes there. So but it's also what I think Tom mentioned in the beginning, standardization and the process. Of course, they have rules for how to do this. This is also an ecosystem which needs to be ready. So it's not only to write a paper and issue a specification, but it's also to implement it. And sometimes we are quick to implement it for some reasons, and sometimes we are a bit late for various reasons. There's a bit of a complexity which needs to be in place in order to motivate this. Then I think it's also important to remind ourselves what you said, that and actually we have a two-track approach on 5G in Telenor. So we have this first track, which is actually Luke was pointing to in the very beginning, which is 5G's natural evolution of 4G. Then it's in the standardization kind of natural thing that everything should be backwards compatible. You know, so that's kind of reflection of that. That is pulling a bit, down the ambition there. Then we have the second track, which is all these fancy use cases, everything else, we should do, which you're reading about in the media and so on, which is actually trying to pull the standardization and the progress in a different way. And this kind of dilemma or conflict is something we have seen in some of these discussions, and we have to be a bit smart on balancing this going forward.
Do you think the geopolitical fallout of the last year has added to the difficulty with the standard? I don't think we need to get into it necessarily, but I mean, the whole supply chain has been broken, and we're having to rethink a lot of things. And do you think that's had an effect?
I'm not sure if I can probably not answer to the question, but at least some thoughts there are that it has created, of course, a bit of uncertainty and something which has to be figured out on how is it to be understood and what are the real implications and so on. Then, of course, you can always discuss if it has really impacted the progress, or it's more like talking to a bit of different people, and then you get something. But it's clear that not everyone are on the same level. So to some extent, there has been an impact on the speed and also what is available for the market in different countries.
Okay, I'm sad to say that we are out of time. Thank you all for your contribution and your time. They're much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you.